Hey guys! Tonight we slip into a world where swords and silence coexist, where the clang of battle fades into the soft clink of a tea bowl. You're about to wander into the peaceful pauses of samurai life, discovering how these fierce warriors found calm, not on the battlefield, but in the quiet ritual of the tea ceremony. You probably won't survive the rush of daily life if you tried to keep their serene pace, trust me. Their patience makes modern waiting in line look like a frantic sprint. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, feel free to share your location and local time in the comments. It's always nice to know who's joining the calm from where. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine yourself stepping into the world of the samurai, Japan's warrior class from the 12th to the 19th century. You might think of fierce battles, armor clanking, and strict honor codes, and you'd be right. But the samurai weren't just swordsmen, they were also poets, philosophers, and masters of calm. When they weren't training or fighting, they practiced an art that might seem surprisingly gentle. The tea ceremony, or chanoyu, it was a deliberate pause, a slow breath in the middle of a turbulent life. The tea ceremony was not about guzzling caffeine or rushing through a quick sip to stay alert. No, it was a meditative practice. You sit down, maybe in a small, dimly lit room with tatami mats and a single flower in a vase. You watch as your host, perhaps a samurai of noble birth, carefully prepares matcha, powdered green tea, whisking it with deliberate, almost hypnotic movements. Every gesture is slow, mindful, intentional. Historians still argue whether the tea ceremony began purely as a way to calm the mind before battle, or if it was more about social status and artistry. Some say it was a tactical tool for mental preparation. Others see it as a way to build quiet social bonds and reflect on simplicity. Either way, the samurai's tea ceremony created a bubble of calm, a moment to step away from the noise and bloodshed of their lives. You probably didn't expect to find a ritual of peace so deeply embedded in the life of a warrior class, famous for its violence. But think of it like this. If you spend all day gripping a sword, wouldn't you also need a place to just breathe? The tea ceremony was exactly that, a soft sanctuary. In fact, samurai who participated in these ceremonies believed that mastering the calm of tea could sharpen their focus and patience for the chaos of battle. It's like training your mind to hold steady in a storm. And while your phone buzzes and the world races, the samurai's tea room stays still. So, as you settle in tonight, imagine the slow, soothing rhythm of the tea ceremony unfolding before you. Each careful movement, each silent pause, offers a gentle reminder. Sometimes, the fiercest strength is the quietest calm. Now, let's gently trace the path of tea itself, starting far from the samurai's quiet tea rooms. Imagine the lush mountains of China, centuries before the samurai ever picked up their whisk, where tea leaves were first cultivated and brewed. Tea culture began in China around the Tang dynasty, roughly in the 7th to 10th centuries, evolving from simple boiled leaves to a refined art form. The Chinese were obsessed with tea's taste, health benefits, and social rituals. Think of it as their version of a slow, mindful coffee break. From this rich tradition, tea traveled by traders, monks, and travelers to Japan, arriving around the 9th century. But it wasn't until centuries later that it became a cultural centerpiece. You might picture a Buddhist monk introducing powdered green tea to Japan. But the reality is a little more complicated. Over time, the Japanese took what they learned from China and transformed it into something uniquely their own. It wasn't just a beverage anymore. It was a spiritual practice, a way to find harmony and simplicity in a complicated world. Historians still argue whether the tea ceremony was more influenced by Chinese imperial court customs or by Zen Buddhist meditation practices. Some believe the aesthetics and precision come from Chinese culture, while others point to the slow, intentional rituals of Zen monks who emphasized mindfulness above all. Either way, the ceremony you'd observe in a samurai's tea room is unmistakably Japanese quiet, unadorned, and deeply symbolic. Picture the first samurai who sat down with a steaming bowl of matcha, probably surprised by how much ceremony and care surrounded this seemingly simple drink. It wasn't just about taste. Preparing and drinking tea was an exercise in presence every step, from warming the bowl to whisking the powdered leaves, was done with a calm focus that pulled the warrior's attention away from the frenzy of their daily life. Interestingly, early tea culture in Japan was a bit more extravagant. Before settling into the simplicity we now associate with Chinoyu, tea gatherings could be quite lavish, full of luxurious objects, elaborate decorations, and long, noisy parties. But as samurai values shifted toward discipline, humility, and austerity, especially under the influence of Zen, the ceremony simplified. This progression towards what's called the wabi-sabi aesthetic embraced rustic beauty, imperfection, and modesty, qualities perfectly suited to a warrior's contemplative moments. Imagine a samurai reflecting on this change, from flamboyant feasts to a quiet, bare tea room, where every crack in the pottery is appreciated, and every movement counts. This wasn't just tea, it was a slow, steady path toward inner peace. So as you breathe in the imagined aroma of whisked green tea, think of the journey it took from the high mountain tea fields of China, through the hands of wandering monks, and finally into the hands of the samurai, where it became a ritual of calm and control. Now that you're settling comfortably into the flow of tea and samurai, let's glide deeper into the quiet world of Zen Buddhism, which is like the spiritual backbone of the tea ceremony. Imagine sitting cross-legged on a tatami mat, your breath steady, as a Zen monk gently instructs you on the art of being present. The connection between Zen and the tea ceremony is intimate, almost like the tea ceremony grew from Zen's very breath. Zen Buddhism arrived in Japan from China during the Kamakura period around the 12th century, and its emphasis on mindfulness, simplicity, and direct experience deeply influenced samurai culture. Picture the samurai not only wielding swords, but also absorbing Zen teachings that taught calmness and mental clarity in the face of chaos. It was a bit like installing a mental firewall against stress. Centuries before mindfulness became a buzzword. In Zen, every moment is a chance to awaken, and every action, no matter how mundane, can be a path to enlightenment. So, when a samurai moves through the tea ceremony, whisking powdered tea or wiping the tea bowl, each gesture becomes a meditation in motion. The ceremony is not about rushing to the finish line or impressing guests, but about being fully present in every flick of the wrist, every breath. One quirky detail is that many of the original tea ceremony masters were Zen monks themselves. Sen no Rikyu, the most famous tea master who shaped the modern tea ceremony, was heavily influenced by Zen principles. His teachings stressed humility, simplicity, and naturalness, which resonated with the samurai's evolving aesthetic. He even recommended that the tea room be so small that it forced everyone to bow, and humbly interact. Erasing social barriers, you could say he was the ultimate host, encouraging warriors to drop their armor of status and simply be. Historians still argue whether Zen's influence was primarily philosophical or practical, whether it shaped the tea ceremony's mindset or its physical forms, like the design of tea rooms and utensils. Some scholars argue that Zen provided the spiritual meaning, while others think the rituals themselves helped samurai train mental discipline. Either way, the connection is undeniable. Interestingly, the practice of zazen, or seated meditation, shares many parallels with the tea ceremony. Both require stillness, attention, and an acceptance of impermanence, the idea that no moment lasts forever, just like the fleeting steam rising from your bowl of matcha. So next time you find yourself mindlessly scrolling on your phone, try to imagine sitting still, appreciating the warmth of a tea bowl, focusing entirely on one gentle act. It's hard to overstate how revolutionary this slow attentiveness was for samurai who lived with the constant threat of violence. So, as you breathe slowly and feel the soft hum of your surroundings, let the Zen influence wash over you, a gentle reminder that peace isn't something to chase, but something you create, one quiet sip at a time. Now, as you let that quiet Zen presence settle, let's turn to the simple but surprisingly elegant tools that transform the tea ceremony from a mere drink into a graceful ritual. Imagine a samurai carefully reaching for each implement with reverence, as if the objects themselves hold centuries of calm within their smooth surfaces. These tools are far from flashy. They're humble, refined, and designed to bring focus, not distraction. First, there's the chawan, the tea bowl. Each chawan is unique, often handcrafted by skilled artisans. Its shape, texture, and color invite touch and admiration. You might picture rough edges or subtle imperfections, a perfect reflection of the wabi-sabi philosophy we mentioned earlier. The samurai would cradle the bowl gently, feeling the warmth seep into their palms, connecting them to the moment. Next comes the chasen, the bamboo whisk. It looks almost like a tiny forest trapped inside your hand, delicate and spindly. Whisking the powdered matcha with the chasen is both an art and a meditation too fast. And the tea might be bitter, too slow, and the texture might clump. The sound of the whisk moving through the tea creates a soft, soothing rhythm almost like a heartbeat. Imagine the gentle scratch and swish, calming your mind like a lullaby. Then there's the chashaku, a slender bamboo scoop used to measure the powdered tea. Its modest curve is designed for precision, not flair. This tiny tool holds the right amount of matcha to bring balance to the brew, much like how the samurai sought balance in their lives. Handling the chashaku with care is an unspoken lesson in patience and control. You'd also see a fukusa, a square silk cloth, used for purifying the tea utensils during the ceremony. Watching a samurai fold and glide the fukusa over the chawan and chashaku is almost hypnotic. The movements slow, deliberate, and elegant, transforming the mundane into a dance of respect. Historians still argue whether these tools were standardized early on or evolved gradually through regional preferences and the influence of different tea masters. Some say the tools' designs emerged from practical needs, while others see their aesthetic form as deeply symbolic, representing spiritual ideals. Either way, the tools embody the heart of the ceremony, a gentle blending of utility and beauty. A quirky tidbit: bamboo whisk makers would often guard their techniques jealously, passing them down only within families. The making of a perfect chasen was considered almost sacred. a craft demanding patience and dedication, not unlike the tea ceremony itself. So, as you imagine holding a tea bowl, feeling the bamboo whisk's soft bristles, let the quiet artistry of these tools remind you that sometimes the simplest objects hold the deepest calm. The samurai didn't need grand armor or loud proclamations to find peace. They just needed a bowl, a whisk, and a moment of stillness. You're now gently stepping into the heart of the ceremony itself, the preparation of matcha, the powdered green tea that's as central to samurai calm as their katana was to battle. Imagine the smooth, vivid green powder resting in a small, elegant container, waiting to be transformed into a warm, frothy cup of tranquility. The preparation is meticulous, a slow dance of motions designed to ground your mind. First, the host, perhaps a samurai or tea master, measures the matcha with the chashaku, carefully scooping just the right amount into the chawan. Not too much, not too little. Balance here is key. Much like balancing life's challenges, next comes the hot water, poured carefully from a small kettle. You can almost hear the soft hiss as the water steams, swirling gently in the bowl. The temperature is crucial. Too hot, and the tea will taste bitter. Too cool, and the flavor won't fully bloom. It's like Goldilocks, but for tea, and you're the picky judge. Then, with the chasen, the bamboo whisk, the host begins the rhythmic motion of whisking. The whisk moves in small, fast circles, creating a frothy layer on top of the tea. Imagine the soft swish, 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 like gentle rain tapping on a roof. The sound alone is enough to lull anyone toward a calm state. The goal is to create a smooth, velvety texture without any lumps, something that looks as good as it feels on your tongue. Historians still argue whether the whisking technique was influenced more by Zen meditation or practical brewing needs. Some suggest the fast, repetitive motion helped focus the mind, much like zazen, while others see it simply as the best way to get the matcha ready to drink. Either way, the rhythm connects you to the present moment, a quirky detail you might not expect. The whisk's bristles are carefully split bamboo strands, sometimes numbering between 80 and 120. Whisk makers would painstakingly carve and split each strand by hand, ensuring just the right flexibility and texture. If the whisk was too stiff, the tea wouldn't froth properly, too soft, and the tea might get over-aerated. It's a delicate balance, much like the ceremony itself. The final act is the quiet, mindful sipping. You hold the bowl with both hands, appreciating the warmth and texture, taking in the subtle bitterness and grassy sweetness. This moment isn't rushed, it's savored. And as you take that first sip, you might feel a surprising sensation, a mix of alertness and deep calm washing over you. So, as you imagine the delicate dance of scooping, pouring, and whisking, remember that the samurai's tea preparation wasn't just about making a drink. It was a practice in patience, precision, and presence. And if you're anything like me, the sound of the whisk alone might be the perfect lullaby for a peaceful night. Now that you've felt the rhythm of preparing matcha, let's lean into the samurai's appreciation for wabi-sabi, the beautiful acceptance of imperfection and impermanence. Imagine a tea bowl with a tiny crack or a slightly uneven glaze, valued not for flawlessness but for its unique character. This aesthetic was at the heart of samurai tea ceremonies, offering a quiet counterpoint to the rigid discipline of their warrior life. Wabi-sabi celebrates simplicity, rustic elegance, and the transient nature of things. The samurai, who spent much of their lives seeking control and perfection in combat, found comfort in these imperfect objects. They understood that just as a flower blooms and withers, so too does every moment, every life. The tea ceremony embodied this gentle philosophy by embracing objects that showed signs of age, wear, and the slow passage of time. Picture a tea room furnished with roughly hewn wooden beams and a simple scroll hanging on the wall, perhaps depicting a haiku about fleeting seasons. The utensils might be chipped or faded, but that only adds to their charm. This aesthetic reminds you that beauty isn't about shiny newness. It's about authenticity, patience, and quiet reflection. Historians still debate whether wabi-sabi was a conscious philosophy adopted by samurai or a natural outcome of their evolving tastes. Some argue it arose from Zen's emphasis on simplicity, while others see it as a practical response to the austere conditions samurai often lived in. Either way, the appreciation of imperfection created a calming environment, encouraging acceptance rather than striving. One quirky detail: some tea masters preferred to use intentionally imperfect utensils, like bowls with deliberate asymmetry or uneven glaze, to provoke reflection on the beauty of imperfection. This might seem counterintuitive, but for the samurai, it was a reminder to find peace in life's inevitable imperfections, something we could all probably benefit from during stressful days. So, as you imagine cradling a tea bowl worn smooth by time and use, let wabi-sabi whisper to you, it's okay not to be perfect. Sometimes, the quietest calm comes from embracing what is, not chasing what should be. Now you're quietly stepping inside the samurai's tea room, a small space designed to slow time and sharpen focus. Imagine crossing a low entrance where you must bow, physically lowering yourself as a sign of humility. The tea room is simple tatami mats underfoot, soft natural light filtering in through paper screens, and perhaps a single scroll or flower carefully placed to draw your attention without distraction. This intimate setting is purpose-built for calm. Unlike the grand halls where samurai might have received guests or planned battles, the tea room is intentionally small and austere. The low ceiling encourages a sense of closeness, almost like the room itself is gently wrapping you in quiet. You can almost hear the muffled rustle of fabric and the soft scrape of wooden floors beneath slow footsteps. The architecture of these rooms follows a philosophy where every element serves mindfulness. The walls might be made from rough plaster, textured enough to invite your gaze without overstimulating. The absence of windows or clocks cuts off distractions, encouraging you to exist fully in the present. Even the shape of the entrance, called the nijiriguchi, forces you to crawl in, reminding you to leave ego and status behind. Historians still argue whether the small size of tea rooms was originally for spiritual reasons or practical ones. Some say it was to create focus and equality among participants, while others suggest it was about making the ceremony accessible during cold winters or cramped castle quarters. Either way, the tea room became a sacred space for connection and calm, a quirky detail you might not expect. Some tea rooms were designed to encourage slow breathing by their shape and acoustics. The way sound lingers softly in the room and the muted lighting work together to coax your body into a relaxed rhythm. It's like the architecture itself is a calming companion. So, as you picture yourself sitting quietly on the tatami, perhaps feeling the slight texture beneath your fingertips, remember that this simple room was a fortress of peace. The samurai may have lived by the sword, but here, in this humble tea room, they found a different kind of strength, one born from stillness and shared silence. As you remain nestled in that calming tea room, let's turn to the host, the samurai or tea master who orchestrates the ceremony with a quiet grace that belies the ritual's complexity. Imagine the host's deliberate, gentle movements as they prepare the tea, each action choreographed to show respect, humility, and a mindful presence. This role is less about commanding attention and more about quietly serving the moment. The host's responsibility is immense but subtle. They don't just make tea, they create an atmosphere of harmony, where everyone present can find calm and connection. Picture the host selecting the utensils with care, arranging them just so, wiping them with the silk cloth, and inviting guests to join without a word, only through shared glances and gestures. For the samurai, being a tea ceremony host was an exercise in control, not control over others, but control over oneself. The ceremony demanded perfect timing, balanced movements, and an awareness of every detail, no matter how small. One misplaced whisk stroke or rushed motion could disrupt the delicate balance of the gathering. Historians still argue whether the host's role evolved more from tea master traditions or from samurai values of discipline and respect. Some suggest the ritual's focus on service reflected broader social hierarchies, while others see it as a way for samurai to practice leadership through humility. Either way, the host embodies a unique blend of authority and gentleness. Here's a quirky bit. Some tea masters trained for years just to perfect the folding and handling of the fukusa silk cloth, because the subtlety of this movement was said to reveal the host's character. Imagine that a tiny cloth becoming a mirror of one's inner calm. So, as you imagine the host's calm, deliberate gestures, remember that their service is a quiet art, one that teaches patience, respect, and the power of slowing down. In this way, the tea ceremony is less about the tea itself and more about the kindness and calm shared between host and guest. As you continue to breathe in the calm atmosphere of the tea room, let's turn our attention to the guests, who play an equally important role in this delicate dance of mindfulness and respect. Imagine yourself sitting quietly, awaiting your turn to receive the tea, aware that your every movement carries meaning. Guests were expected to embody a silent respect, a shared calm that helped hold the ceremony's peaceful balance. The etiquette for guests was strict but gentle, no loud voices or abrupt gestures. You would bow deeply upon entering, accept the tea bowl with both hands, and take a moment to admire its imperfections before sipping. This wasn't just politeness, it was a way of tuning your senses and grounding your mind in the present. The slow, silent appreciation of each sip echoed the ceremony's emphasis on patience and attention. Guests also had to be mindful of the host's efforts. If the host spent minutes carefully preparing the tea, you wouldn't gulp it down like a caffeine addict hitting a double espresso shot. Instead, you'd savor it, acknowledging the ritual behind each movement. Sharing this quiet moment built a subtle social harmony, a reminder that even fierce samurai could soften and connect. Historians still argue how much these strict rules were socially enforced versus how much they evolved naturally from shared respect. Some say they reflected rigid class distinctions, while others see the etiquette as practical ways to maintain focus and calm during potentially lengthy ceremonies. Either way, the rituals encouraged everyone to slow down and be present. A quirky fact is that some guests would silently write poetry inspired by the ceremony, using the quiet space to reflect creatively. The tea ceremony wasn't just a drink, it was a catalyst for art and contemplation. So, as you imagine yourself sitting among these quiet warriors, feeling the warmth of the tea bowl, Remember that the guest's silent respect was part of the ceremony's gentle magic, a shared moment of peace in a world often anything but. As the quiet ceremony flows, imagine the subtle changes as the seasons gently shift outside the tea room's paper screens. Seasonal shifts weren't just background scenery, they were woven into the very fabric of the tea ceremony, influencing the selection of utensils, the decor, and even the style of tea served. For the samurai, the changing seasons offered a gentle reminder of life's rhythms and impermanence. In spring, for example, you might find cherry blossoms depicted on the scroll, or a fresh flower chosen to brighten the room, symbolizing renewal and fleeting beauty. The tea utensils might be lighter and more delicate, reflecting the soft warmth of the season. Come winter, the room's decor would shift to muted colors and simple designs, emphasizing warmth and quietude in the cold months. This seasonal mindfulness created a sensory dialogue between the inner space of the tea room and the natural world outside. It invited guests to slow down, notice the subtle shifts in nature, and find peace in the cyclical flow of life. You can almost hear the soft rustle of leaves or feel the crisp winter air pressing gently against the shoji screens. Historians still debate how strictly samurai adhered to these seasonal changes. Some believe it was a strict rule in formal ceremonies, while others argue it was more of a poetic guideline, open to interpretation by hosts and guests. Either way, the seasonal influence added depth and texture to the ceremony's calming effect. A quirky tidbit: some tea masters kept small weather diaries, noting how seasonal changes affected their tea gatherings and even the taste of the water used. They believed that the subtle mineral shifts in spring versus autumn water altered the tea's character, deepening their appreciation for nature's tiny details. So, as you imagine the seasonal touches transforming the tea room, let yourself drift gently with the passing months, aware that, like the tea, all things change, and that calm can be found in every season's quiet embrace. As you sit quietly, the path to the tea room beckons you with a slow, deliberate invitation. Imagine yourself stepping onto the garden path that leads to the ceremony, a carefully designed walkway known as the roji, or dewy path. Every step you take here is meant to calm your mind and prepare you for the mindful ritual ahead. The roji is no ordinary garden path. Picture uneven stones laid out with intention, forcing you to slow down and place your feet carefully. The path winds gently through moss, ferns, and simple shrubs, with perhaps a stone lantern softly glowing as dusk approaches. Walking this path is like a slow meditation, each step a mindful breath. The sensory details matter: the crunch of gravel underfoot, the subtle scent of damp earth, the cool shade of bamboo leaves swaying in a gentle breeze. These elements work together to shift your focus away from daily worries and into the present moment. The roji invites you to shed distractions, much like the samurai shed their armor upon entering the tea room. Historians still argue how standardized the roji was across tea houses, whether every path was carefully crafted with these precise calming features, or if variations were common. Some scholars suggest the path's design was a practical way to keep guests clean and orderly before entering, while others emphasize its spiritual significance in preparing the mind. A quirky fact: some tea houses place stepping stones specifically to encourage slow walking, with stones spaced just far enough apart to break hurried strides. The idea was to prevent rushing and to synchronize your breathing with your footsteps. It's like an ancient slow-motion exercise, long before slow living became trendy. So, As you imagine taking each careful step along this dewy path, feel your mind soften and your body relax. The journey itself is part of the ritual, a gentle transition from the noise of the outside world to the serene stillness waiting inside. As you settle into the soft quiet after your mindful walk, the tea ceremony reveals itself as more than just a moment of calm. It becomes a kind of mental training. Picture the samurai, not only practicing swordsmanship, but also honing their minds through the slow, deliberate tea rituals. Every whisk, every bow, every sip is a lesson in patience, focus, and self-control. The tea ceremony demands that you be fully present, aware of every gesture and sensation. Imagine trying to rush the ritual. You'd feel the tension in your own hands, the tea slipping clumsily from the bowl, the harmony of the moment shattered. For the samurai, mastering this control over small details was a way to prepare for the unpredictability of battle. If you can calm your mind during tea, perhaps you can hold steady when chaos erupts. This practice is akin to modern mindfulness techniques, centuries ahead of their time. The slow pace teaches you to observe without judgment and to accept each moment as it comes. The samurai knew that battle could be sudden and violent, but their training in calm helped them face it without losing composure. In a way, the tea ceremony was like a mental dojo. Historians still debate whether the tea ceremony was primarily a practical tool for mental training or more of a cultural pastime that coincidentally improved focus. Some argue that its role as mental conditioning is overstated, while others believe it was integral to the samurai's code of discipline. Either way, the calming ritual clearly helped warriors cultivate patience. A quirky tidbit: some samurai would repeat the tea ceremony rituals daily, using them as a form of meditation to reset their minds. Much like we might use breathing exercises or yoga today, it was a way to center themselves amidst the pressures of their demanding lives. So, as you imagine yourself moving slowly through each tea preparation step, remember that this gentle practice was a training ground, not just for tea mastery, but for mastering the self. And as you breathe in that calm, you're stepping closer to the peace those samurai sought. One mindful moment at a time. You've come a long way with the tea ceremony, and now it's time to see how this ritual quietly wove social bonds among samurai who, despite their fierce reputations, also needed moments of connection and camaraderie. Imagine a group of warriors, clad in armor by day, sitting together in a humble tea room, sharing silence and tea instead of strategies and swords. It might seem odd to picture hardened fighters finding comfort in such a gentle practice, but tea ceremonies created an intimate space for building trust and respect. For the samurai, whose lives often involved rigid hierarchies and strict codes of honor, the tea ceremony was an egalitarian pause. Within the tea room's walls, rank softened, and shared mindfulness fostered a quiet sense of community. This was especially important during times of peace or political tension, when alliances needed subtle reinforcement without the noise of formal meetings. Picture the delicate tea bowl passed from hand to hand, a symbol of shared experience and mutual respect. The slow pace of the ceremony encouraged conversation, but only after silent contemplation, words chosen with care. Much like the tea itself, these moments allowed samurai to reveal aspects of their character beyond their prowess in battle. Their taste, their patience, and their ability to find calm. Historians still argue how widespread these social tea gatherings were among different samurai classes. Some suggest tea ceremonies were mostly reserved for elite warriors, while others believe even lower-rank samurai participated in more modest forms. Regardless, the tea ceremony served as a social glue, reinforcing bonds quietly but powerfully. A quirky fact: some samurai would compose haikus or short poems inspired by their tea gatherings, turning shared calm into shared creativity. It was a gentle reminder that warriors could be artists, too. So, as you imagine the soft murmur of voices after a silent tea, remember that the ceremony wasn't just about solitude, it was about connection. In these quiet moments, samurai found not just calm but community. Now, drifting closer to our own time, you can almost hear the faint echo of samurai tea ceremonies in today's world. Picture a quiet room somewhere in modern Japan or beyond, where someone slowly whisks matcha, guided by centuries-old traditions. The tea ceremony's legacy lives on, quietly soothing minds and offering a gentle refuge from the fast-paced modern world. Modern practitioners might not wear armor or carry swords, but the same principles of mindfulness, humility, and respect endure. The ritual invites anyone, whether a seasoned tea master or a curious beginner, to slow down and savor a moment of calm. It's a bridge connecting past and present, reminding us that tranquility is timeless. Interestingly, tea ceremonies today often blend tradition with innovation. Some hosts incorporate ambient sounds like soft bamboo chimes or flowing water to enhance the sensory experience. Others experiment with modern tea house designs while keeping the ceremony spirit intact. It's like watching a graceful dance evolve while holding on to its original rhythm. Historians still debate how much the modern tea ceremony resembles the samurai's original practice. Some argue that commercialization and tourism have softened the ritual's strictness, while others believe these adaptations help keep the tradition alive and accessible. Either way, the calming essence remains. A quirky tidbit: matcha has become popular worldwide, featured in everything from lattes to desserts, yet few realize its deep roots in samurai mindfulness. So next time you sip a matcha latte, imagine the slow, careful whisking of powdered tea centuries ago, a quiet act of peace echoing through time. So, as you imagine that smooth, frothy cup in your own hands, let the samurai's tea ceremony remind you that even in a noisy world, you can find calm one slow sip at a time.